Greetings, Guardians. Prismatic has been out for 2 weeks now, and at this point I am certain that the vast majority of players have unlocked all the fragments and everything and are now looking for very good builds. Well, for some classes it's easier than others. Titans just kind of didn't get a great end of the stick, but I do have a build that's different from the normal Consecration Titan build, and you'll see that last. First and foremost, I'm going to show you the Warlock build, which there's actually two of. It's just changing one helmet and two abilities, but besides that it stays the exact same. And for hunters, I don't actually have the items I need for the build, but I can display the concept of it working, which makes you practically unkillable. So rather than bog up the time, let's get right into it and start talking about the Warlock. The Warlock build hinges on two exotics, Crown of the Tempests and Nezarec's Sin. For Crown of the Tempest, you have to run both Arc Grenade and Melee in order to make sure that you have the constant uptime of Conduction Tines. But when you have this buff up, you get upwards of 500% ability regen for 3 stacks, which is the maximum amount of stacks. It's a pretty insane buff. Nezarec's Sin, on the other hand, just requires you to get Void kills, so abilities or weapons, and it will give you 200% base regen of each ability. Now, this is base and this is total regen. I'm not quite sure what the difference is mathematically for overall, but they feel like they're about the same uptime, which is quite nice. Just this one is a bit more peaky. With that being said, let's talk about the fragments that you need to use and the aspects you need to use for this arc build first, and then we'll go into the Nezarec's Sin one afterwards. For supers, they're both going to run Cataclysm, because I think Nova Bomb Cataclysm does more damage than Needle Storm. I could be wrong, but I think that is the case. I am also using Phoenix Dive, but you can use whichever class ability you prefer. I am using Chain Lightning and Storm Grenade, which are required for the Arc build, alongside Feed the Void and Lightning Surge. For fragments, I'm running Facet of Courage, Facet of Balance, Facet of Awakening, Facet of Dominance, and Facet of Sacrifice. Facet of Dominance is the most important aspect, and it's just because it makes the jolt happen from the grenades, which gives you more abilities. On the other side, Facet of Sacrifice is also important if you ever want to transcend. You will constantly have a arc buff because you're getting chain kills. You just need 3 kills to get amplified. And this will just make it so that you can get some darkness energy as you kill enemies. As for the Void build, we will be using Graviton Lance to keep the ability uptime of Abyssal Extractors, which just makes it so that any Void kill gives you bonus base energy regen, which is quite nice. And in this case, you just need to make sure that you have Facet of Dominance to weaken enemies, and Facet of Sacrifice, same as before. In this case, we are using Arcane Needle to apply a Darkness debuff, being Unraveling, and Vortex Grenade, as well as the Hellion Aspect. All in all, it's the exact same build, and you'll see some gameplay showing how well it works. Alright, as you watch the footage in the background, I'm going to go into detail on what the rotations are. You want to lead with your grenade, going for 1 to 2 kills, so I advise throwing it at a spawning group or a group of bunched up enemies, because they will try to run from it. Then you want to use the Lightning Surge Slide Melee, which will then bring back your grenade if you get enough kills or hits with it. At any point, if you run out of energy, just because you didn't get enough kills or various other reasons, you can use Trinity Ghoul or any other arc weapon in order to get Ionic Traces to get back your abilities. To the same degree, if you're using a weapon with Volt Shot, you can use the Jolt from that to trigger the passive effect of the exotic as well. By doing this, you can very easily keep 100% uptime of your abilities. In the footage, you'll see multiple stages where I am actively using Trinity Ghoul in between to get my abilities back up, because when you finish a group, you might not have killed enough enemies to reset your abilities. But even in those worst case scenarios, the ability uptime is insanely high. It is not even close to any other problems. Now, the positive of this build is that you get to keep spamming abilities, and that is very nice for dealing with medium tanky enemies and small squishy enemies. But bigger enemies can be quite hard to kill, so I'd recommend running a strong heavy weapon like a rocket launcher or a grenade launcher. In the footage, I am using a LMG from the Pale Heart, which I'm just trying out because it's got bait and switch on it. I wanted to see if it's good, and I'd say it's pretty solid. It's not a bad weapon for sure. Overall, the build is very solid and extremely easy to operate, which is the best plus I can give for a build. There's one other aspect of the Arc build here that I do want to highlight. So when you're Transcendent and you throw the Transcendent Grenade on an enemy, you can then spam Chain Lightning with no cooldown. I'm not quite sure why this is, but I have noticed that it almost always works, and if I do anything but use the Chain Lightning melee, it goes on cooldown. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but it's worth noting. Chain Lightning only does about 17k damage anyway, so it's not like it's a big deal. The Void build is a lot simpler, because Nezarec Sin only requires you to get Void kills, and the 200% increased base energy regen applies to all abilities. However, with this added consistency, it isn't as strong when you get the correct combos going off. For example, with the Arc build, you saw that I threw one grenade, use Chain Lightning, and I could throw the grenade again. With the Void build, it's a bit slower. However, the consistency makes it a little bit better for endgame content where you're going to be picking enemies off from a distance. Both builds are viable and very fun. And a big positive for the Arc build is that while you are amplified with the current seasonal artifact, there is a mod that allows you to take less damage, which is very useful for most forms of content. So allow me to state first and foremost for this Prismatic Hunter build. I don't actually have any of the pieces needed to make this build, however I can prove to you numerically that it works, and the footage in the background is showing that Woven Mail and Frost Armor does indeed stack. So what is the gimmick for this build? With the exotic class items, and yes, this is the exact problem, I'm a solo player, I can't get my hands on them, sorry, that's just the way it is. You can get Woven Mail and Frost Armor from Duskfield Grenades. You need to get Spear of Renewal and Spear of Seared Tarachne, however you say that. It's the one that gives you Woven Mail when you use a grenade. It used to only work on grapple, but now it works on any grenade that you use. This combined with Spear of Renewal will allow you to get Frost Armor and Woven Mail, which combined is a 22% damage reduction and 40% damage reduction. So long as you're not getting headshot with Woven Mail, because it doesn't apply on headshots. Now, before you get too excited, let me walk you through an understanding of how damage reduction works. And this isn't some very basic math, it's a bit complicated because it's a multiplicative return rather than a additive return, which means that you're not getting nearly as much as you think you're getting. To start, let's just first clarify that I don't believe the actual damage formula has been released by Bungie, however, this is what makes the most sense based upon the damage numbers that we see in game. So the formula will now be shown on screen. X represents your first variable, say in this case 22%, Y representing your second variable, which in this case is 40%, and then so on and so forth down the line. In this case, you can see that we have Frost Armor, Woven Mail, the 30% from having 10 Resilience, Elemental Resistance mods giving 25%, these are your Arc Resistance and so on and so forth that go on your chest plate, and then one conditional mod such as the Sniper, Melee, or Concussive mod. With all of these stacked so far, we're looking at 80% damage reduction. And this of course can only go higher with other things such as the seasonal artifact that gives you damage reduction while amplified. In total you get to somewhere about 84% damage reduction. Alright, now that we have the damage reduction numbers and the formula kind of understood, I'm going to leave it up for just a couple seconds here just so that if you have to actually think about it and learn it, you can see the formula and apply it yourself in the future. Just remember that it stacks multiplicatively and not linearly. You do not have 120% damage reduction or anything absurd like that if you stack all of these together, so just keep that in mind. But there is one other important element of the Prismatic Hunter build that I have yet to say, and that's that you need to run the Golden Gun Super. And this is because of a specific fragment, the one that you see on screen right now. Yep, that's right. The fragment that you desperately need to run with this build is Facet of Purpose and is the reason why you have to run Golden Gun. When you pick up an Orb of Power, it will give you Restoration. This will make you borderline invincible against most enemies, sparing anything that can suppress you. And theoretically, with this build, you'll be having 80% if not more damage reduction and healing. So past that, you can put whatever you want on this build. This is the base framework for you to survive as a Prismatic Hunter. You can also do this in a couple of other ways. You could theoretically just run the Strand Super alongside the Renewal Grasp Exotic Arms and Duskfield Grenades in order to do this combo without the Restoration. However, the lack of healing will make it a lot harder to survive, especially in endgame content. Overall though, this should make you nigh on invincible, so you don't have much to worry about in general. Now, I can't say in practice how hard it is to maintain this, but you run 100 discipline, 100 resilience, and I think it should be more than feasible to keep almost permanent uptime of this damage reduction. However, again, I am a solo player. I can't even get the exotic class items, so hopefully someone out there has this and they can tell me if it works or not, because I think it should. And I'm pretty confident about it. Okay guys, before we get into Prismatic Titan, I do want to say one thing that is very upsetting. Prismatic Titan's just not good. Compared to Hunter and Warlock, we don't have any option besides using melee, and even at that, we don't even come close to the potential of the other two classes. I feel like Bungie really missed the mark with Prismatic Titan, and because of that, I tried desperately to find any build variety that would work, trying to get away from using Consecration because that's what every other build online is saying to do. So I just want to say for all my Titan mains out there, me included, that we just got the short end of the stick, and for now we gotta deal with it. I don't know what Bungie can do to really fix it at this point. The aspects and fragments we got aren't very strong, and we have very little synergy in between them besides just melee. A good aspect that they could add in the future would have been controlled demolition or something, but I don't think the ones that we have can be fixed to make it work, and I actually have started writing a script about a whole video on this topic, so I'll leave it at that, and hopefully I make that video at some point, or it might get thrown on the back burner. If it does get thrown on the back burner, a big part of the problem is that we don't have any exotics that synergize well with Prismatic. Most of our exotics are very hyper-focused on one specific aspect, such as all of Solar synergizing with Sunspots. So, yeah, I'll just leave that there, and let's move on to the actual build. Alright, as you saw in the footage, this whole Titan build revolves around Ergo Sum. Specifically, the Arc Conductor version of Ergo Sum. I have a pretty good one with a wave frame on it, so I have the Chain Lightning whenever I do the heavy, and the wave frame goes very far. You pair this with the Artifact Blade Stamina, and you have unlimited ammo. This, of course, is being paired with the Stronghold, so you have Restoration and basically invincibility while you're blocking. Overall, it's just a very bog standard Stronghold sword build, but we have a green ammo sword, so it's very nice. For aspects, it doesn't actually matter. None of these aspects do anything with the build. I have tried every single permutation combination. Knockout doesn't give damage. Consecration is being used by every other build, so I didn't want to use it. Sorry, not sorry. Unbreakable is just not good. I thought shield was shield, right? You might as well use it at least. Diamond Lances are cool. They actually have a lot of synergy with Prismatic, but they're just not it. And Rengar's Lash is nice because you can at least suspend enemies that are too dangerous to deal with. That's the same reason why I'm running Shackle Grenade and Frenzy Blade. Another problem with this build is that it is hard to transcend normally because, well, you don't do any darkness damage. All of your damage is coming from the sword. Super-wise, I'm using Thunder Crash just so that I have the arc-on-arc synergy. It doesn't actually matter which one I run. I probably should be running Twilight Arsenal, but you can run any of these that you want. I just wouldn't recommend a roaming super, just one that's instant done, so you have Twilight Arsenal or Thunder Crash as your options. Riveting. I'm using Thruster because I think Rengar's Lash and Thruster just go really well together. And as for fragments, the only one that matters is Facet of Protection and Facet of Awakening, so you get the Ionic Traces so that you get your abilities up. Besides that, everything else is just up to your preference. Of course, I am running my favorite troll roll with this, Clown Cartridge Bipod. I like having 3 rockets. It's not good, but it's funny. And Triple Arc Surge. Past that, run whatever you want and however you please. This build makes you more or less just invincible so long as you're using your sword wisely. Overall, all 3 of these builds are very good, at least in theory. I can confirm in practice that the Warlock and Titan builds are both very, very good. The Hunter build theoretically should be absolutely insane for damage reduction and healing, but again, I'm a solo player. I can't get the exotic class items, so hopefully I find someone to run it with in the future, but I currently don't have anyone who is playing the game. Currently helping a friend through the campaign though, which is the person who sent me a party invite in the earlier section for Warlock. So don't worry about that for now. Hopefully I get my hands on the class item soon and can test the build. If I can, I'll verify it and then update this video in the comments. I'll put the Titan and Warlock builds in dim. I can't really do that for the Hunter one because I don't have any of the pieces. So sorry about that. They'll be in the comments, and so will all the songs in order. So I hope you guys liked the video. Like, comment, sub, all that good jazz, and happy hunting.